So without further ado, let's get into some intros. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Haas. I'm one of the co-founders here at MaintainX. I've worked with a lot of our enterprise and um, larger clients to help drive strategic initiatives around digital transformation. Work with a lot of executive leaders on helping them kind of understand what they need to know about AI today as it relates to digital transformation at large. Um, very much including and focusing on reliability and maintenance, but not exclusively. I also work and lead our MaintainX community. If you haven't checked that out yet, definitely do that. It's community.getmaintainx.com. We have a really large and growing group of folks that are, uh, you folks like yourselves that are in there helping ask each other questions, things like that. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Roshan. Take it away, Roshan.
Thank you, Nick. Great to be here, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time. So I'm Roshan. I'm the Applied AI product lead. I lead our team building applied AI features and advanced analytics products across the board. I'm also building out the organization that focuses on AI research, on development, and on overall strategy. I also represent the MaintainX AI team at conferences and events like this. I hold a number of AI patents, and before working in manufacturing operations, I worked in quantitative finance and legal AI. I'm really excited to be here and excited to get into it with you all. With that, I'll hand it over to Andrew.
Thank you, Roshan. So I'm Andrew. Hello again to my fellow Canadians and whoever is over in Kitchener. Look, I lead the marketing for our AI solutions here, working alongside my counterpart in Roshan. You'll see me here and there at different events showcasing some of our AI that we have at MaintainX. And, in past lives, I've done a lot around AI, whether it's, with as an embedded within your features in the software that you have, or as individual application layers for, really more advanced solutions, and all the way down to helping customers and whatnot understand the actual tangible impact that AI can have on their solutions and on their daily operations. Nick, I think with that, you're going to jump into some of the questions for us.
Yeah, let's rock and roll. All right. So give you all a little quick format update too. We're gonna just have a little bit of back and forth and conversation here, but we will jump into some maybe product related demos as we see fit if it helps kind of explain some of the things we're talking about. But we really want to make this a conversation where we kind of really talk about the heart of how you can how we can help kind of get you up to speed on what AI powered maintenance looks like. So Roshan, Andrew, just to get things ball rolling here, what does AI powered maintenance look like and mean to you two?
Andrew, you want to kick us off there?
I'll jump in first. To me, AI powered maintenance, it's really about how can we make maintenance smarter, more efficient, and help you as a maintenance technician, maintenance manager, maintenance team to be able to do more with the hours that you have available. It's about making sure that it's easy to use, that it's making your operations, able to do more with the hours that you have available, keep your assets online and whatnot. But at the end of the day, that AI doesn't have to be this big, scary, do everything, take on every kind of piece of AI available in the market, that you're just able to start with it in the ways that you're comfortable with. I think, Nick, you have made mention to that earlier, that right, AI is here to help, but it's here to help you within maintenance in the specific ways that you're ready to do so.
Awesome answer,
Love
Andrew.
it.
I will add that by saying, to me, AI-powered maintenance is a lot about information management. I think in 2025, especially, contemporary AI tools are amazing at gathering information, creating it, surfacing it at the right time. And to me, a lot of this is about understanding the trends in the info, the resolutions that happen on factory floors, and collecting that in a centralized way so that it's available at your fingertips, so that you are more equipped to deal with a transitioning workforce and increasingly scarce information over time. A lot of this stuff doesn't get tracked. It doesn't end up anywhere concrete. My hope is that AI can help over time solve that problem and make this more democratized, if you will, and accessible.
Love that. And big plus one to both of those things. I'll tell you one thing that makes it really I get really excited about sort of the power of what we're doing here with AI powered maintenance is something that's always been a bit of a fear of mine. Is like we have this 50% of the maintenance and reliability professionals are aging out of the workforce rapidly, right? And Russian touched on it, how they have this transitioning workforce. We have a lot of we don't have enough skilled labor to backfill the volume of folks that are leaving the industry. So we're going to have unskilled workers by default coming in and supporting a lot of liability tasks that, frankly, may be a little bit beyond where they're ready to handle with the knowledge that they're able to take out of the gate. So, one of the things that excites me the most about AI powered maintenance, obviously, being able to predict failures, get out of, go towards this mission of zero unplanned downtime, but it's around helping this next generation come in and be effective and efficient and safe right out of the gate. And that's something that I think can be, really powerful to, from a macro societal level around what the potential of some of the technologies can do. So love that. So like what are as we're talking about what gets us excited about, what AI power maintenance looks like, what are some of the primary challenges that the two of you are seeing with getting these strategies off the ground from folks that you're working with and hearing from?
I can kick off on this one. One of the ones that I see most often is the AI onboarding task and AI enablement. Regardless of how powerful the features you build are, people often aren't used to using them within their workflows. So a big focus of ours is making sure that these things are intuitive, are easy to use, but that over time, people get more comfortable with using them. People build trust in these solutions by getting reliable answers and getting them consistently, and that they form the habit of reaching for an AI tool when it's available. There's a lot of steps before that, but one of the ones that I found unintuitive sometimes is that part of the task is just getting people to remember that it exists in the first place and getting people used to using it within their workflows as opposed to a completely separate tool or as opposed to something that happens after the fact rather than right in the moment.
This is a great point. Like I think it's kind of funny how we've seen as we, we're 6.5 years old company. But one of the things that one of the biggest challenges that we face in the market, as far as one of the our biggest competition, if you will, is that inertia of the change management, that resistance to go towards even digitizing something that's being done on clipboards and paper and spreadsheets. And so it's almost like we're having to do this sort of next level shift to say, hey, now that we're digitizing, we're going to go into AI, and it's people get a little bit uncomfortable when you move their cheese or and you progress quickly. So I think it's a great call out is that how and it helps inform some of the ways that we think about building these tools in ways that can be really integrated with the workflows folks are working on. But Andrew, what are some of the challenges you're seeing?
You touched on what I want to speak about here is the digitization,
Us,
right? That
yeah,
the only way that you're going to get quality, actionable information coming out of your AI insights, whether that be, something like report and dashboard based from AI, or whether it's text or whatever it might be, you have to have good data to start off with. I know that's not something that everybody has, right? You said whiteboards. Sometimes information is just from walkie-talkies. Sometimes, you talked about the transition to having like a less skilled workforce, right? You're losing some of that institutional knowledge. We have to have, one of the things that can be difficult is making sure you have that data ready and available that your AI can then leverage to give you the most useful insights and the information that you can do the absolute most with. That it's not just, saying, that it's not just an insight, it's something you can do with it, or else it's just another tool on the shelf that doesn't see enough use sometimes.
yeah, I love that. And so let's kind of get into some of the nitty gritty or some of the more tactical things. The first thing I'd love to touch on is like AI powered inventory and asset management. What are some of the short term trends that y'all are seeing, things that we're going to be seeing, more immediately than later, around like how can AI predict parts consumption trends? How can we optimize inventory levels and maintain X? Andrew, do you want to kick that one off?
Sure. I mean, I'll take, the most basic approach, like some of what we have coming down the pipeline in some short term, and like some of the things that we're hearing about of interest is just a way to be able to see at a glance, what is my parts inventory really looking like? If I look at my parts, how can I tell which ones are going to be needing to be restocked soon, which ones are urgent, and having that kind of quick glance insight that lets you take another action, right? Decide if you need to make that purchase order or whatnot. And that yes, you can do that manually through, thresholds and whatnot, but that at the end of the day, making that AI powered, so it's starting to predict as opposed to just kind of react to a threshold that's able to predict your parts are actually going to be running out. That's something that's really exciting that we think that we've heard about.
Yeah, echoing Andrew's point there, I think that one of the most valuable features is the short-term ability to say, for this month, for this quarter, a given feature is understocked or overstocked based on people's expected maximum and minimum quantities. We see a lot of customers setting those static thresholds that Andrew had mentioned, but we want to be able to update them over time and actually encourage or make recommendations on different inventory management patterns before we get into the forecasting piece. I think once that's in place, once you have more consistent and more sustainable parts purchasing habits and practices. We want to start seeing on a longer term basis than that, on a yearly cadence or across your facilities outside of just one given facility. Um, what is the average lead time for a given set of parts? Is something, more back order than another thing, and start making recommendations on even when to purchase something or the exact quantity that you should purchase.
And just going back to something right at the start too, right? We talked about data and like, what does it look like? I think one of the core differences about how we can use AI for our maintenance teams, how you're able to use it and needing that good data, it comes into effect with something like parts, where you need to have a large data set available to be able to start to pick out those patterns. Otherwise, you're dealing with essentially too small of a sample size, right? You're judging it off of a couple of parts reorders or maybe something that isn't really frequent enough. AI will work best when you have tons of data available for it. And so it can pick out those patterns that we as humans just don't have the ability to, right? Like your Excel spreadsheet with thousands and thousands of rows, that's difficult enough. Now, multiply by that, that by like 1,000. And that's the kind of data that, if your AI has access to it, then it can give you real high quality insights. And I think that's what you're speaking to, Roshan, that it needs to have this wealth of data that then it can help to predict some of that for you with parts.
Big plus one there. Yeah.
Well,
A big piece
yeah,
of the challenge that we face for our customers is just getting that information into MaintainX in the first place, making sure we leverage whatever exists and any historical patterns that we can look at. It's very hard to start from scratch. It's not impossible, but the earlier you kick this off, the earlier you can get those insights.
yeah, makes sense. We were starting to tease out, how AI is going to be able to help them predict their usage, be able to understand when they're going to run low with the lead time. Is AI going to automate reordering of critical spare parts and maintain X soon to help prevent downtime? Is that coming down the pipe?
That's a great
And
question.
how are we thinking about it?
I'll
Yeah,
start here and hand off to Andrew. Automate, I hesitate to promise. I think that we start with recommendations. We start with lighter features like the updates to minimum and maximum quantities. We start to highlight things and send notifications when we see that something might be understocked in a month. Over time, though, I think the key to getting to that point is a wider understanding of supply chain, better relationships with the parts suppliers, with OEMs, so that we get that insight from the horse's mouth, if you will, and we have this diverse source of data to have that sort of macro view on where these parts are coming from, the logistics around getting them to a given facility, how they transfer between facilities, and getting to a more holistic data set so that we can get higher confidence in the things that we're recommending so that we can start to automate. To come full circle, though, in the short term, I would say most of these things are human validated. We still need, feedback. We need to see what works and what doesn't. And slowly but surely, we get smarter with those recommendations. We get more active in influencing workflows.
yeah. I want to quickly just follow up on that, Roshan, because I think a lot of folks, one thing I think that is really special and unique about the way that you're thinking about, our AI approach to product right now is it's not out of your wheelhouse to build a tool that would automate that reordering, right? Like that's not a inconceivably possible product today, but we aren't doing it because we don't think that's necessarily what's going to be most beneficial to people today, right?
No, I appreciate that take. That's exactly where we're at, and we're on the same page about it. It is not out of the question for us to do that today, but I think a big theme that we focus on is that human element and human in the loop mechanisms, not only because they make sure that we don't make mistakes, but because they make the system smarter over time. With adoption, we
Yeah.
see what works and what doesn't, and it continuously improves.
I think if I can chime in too, like the human in the loop
Yeah.
element, a really critical part because being able to have AI automatically reorder parts or really being able to automate any of that is great, but it also requires, again, a topic that you introduced it with, the amount of trust that you have to be willing to place into it. And, that it's reordering the right amounts, that it's reordering it when it's the right appropriate time, and that, ultimately that you can build confidence that it's doing it, and that you can also explain that trust and confidence to others in your organization as well. And, when it is something that we have, what I've often seen is that, it is available, but it might only be trusted for low risk parts, right? We don't necessarily want to start off with it at the highest, most critical parts. That's, again, back to the human in the loop. AI is most valuable when it's helping you to do your job, not necessarily doing your entire job for you, but your value is being able to weigh in those critical situations. If you need to have however many gears or belts or whatever it might be in stock, having AI there to reorder that is great. It's a low risk item, but especially when you get into those medium and high risk items, you need to have a justification for why you had the right amounts, why you reordered when you did. And it's ultimately on you to be able to make sure that you're keeping operations running. So, having that human element, I think, is really important.
Yeah, that's a great call out. And one thing I want to touch on too, because I've seen a few folks already talk about it in the chat, and as long as I think it's kind of a quick level set for folks to uh, kind of understand how we're, as we're talking about our AI strategies. There's questions around security. How are we thinking about like data security with AI? Or like how are we making sure that this is something that our clients can trust to work with us on?
Sorry about that, Nick. My audio dropped for a second. If it was addressed to me, would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, it was. It's okay. I wanted to know how you're thinking about data security and how people can trust putting data into our AI systems and tools. Like, I know that's sort of a first principle of yours is making sure that it's not only trustworthy from that end user experience that they can trust the outputs, but that we can make sure that their data that we can make sure that they feel careful, that they can trust us by giving us their data and speak kind of at a high level around how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. I appreciate the question too. It's one that we get all the time. Um, it's not easy. There are a lot of layers to that system. There are a lot of pieces of protection that we need to put into place across our AI solutions. But starting from the data coming um, in general, we're very conscious of IP, of PII, personal identifying information, of the data security of where this is coming from and how much of it we can use. We avoid situations where we're pulling customer data to train. We want to make sure that the output is reliable, but we want to make sure that things are customized for given users and are exclusively trained on their data, and there's no pollution. But going from there throughout the steps of the AI process, we want to use that information now that we know it's concrete, now that it's sort of sanctioned, so that we can increase the reliability of outputs. On the second layer, on the, call it hallucination protection, we also want to make sure that the security of data leads to the validity of a given answer. It only tries to respond when it actually knows a complete thing. Our AI systems try to be as transparent as possible when it comes to, partial information or lack of information rather than making anything up.
Fantastic. And just as a second, oh yeah, go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Nick.
I was gonna say the next like sort of question one B of that is, what are some of the models that we're using today, and how are you thinking about those those questions as you're thinking as you're working on the product?
Yeah, I mean, long story short, the world is moving quickly on the AI front. There are evolutions, every month, every quarter, that's for sure. And there's a lot of new innovations that we want to take advantage of. That said, today our approach is a combination of leaning on the strength of foundational model providers. These are, large tech companies. These are companies like OpenAI and Anthropic that continue to update these models for enterprise users at scale. But beyond that, we also build a lot of custom mechanisms to make sure that that is fully integrated into MaintainX, is specific to the CMMS and EAM workflow, and has protections and prompting and gates and all of that that make sure that they are within our customer workflows, but are also specific to our use case and not, a generalized off-the-shelf tool. Coming back to the model concept, though, all of this changes quickly. So alongside that, we want to stay contemporary. We do test things, as soon as they come out. We have a cautious approach, but what I would say is the team is very contemporary. They're very excited about these new tools coming out, and this will evolve over time. This could change, 6 months from now, from a modeling perspective. Is there something new that comes out that is a better fit for our use case and for our users? And we're continuously exploring them.
My,
Yeah.
if I
So
may
go for it, Andrew.
my
Please do.
is that at the end of the day, this is the easiest and best approach if you're not looking to become an AI expert and have a dedicated AI expert team. Because I've marketed solutions in past lives where the AI was its own layer, but then as a result, you had to have a team of data scientists to be able to, and data engineers to be able to continually update it with all the latest and greatest items like Roshan is talking about. You have to continue training it with more data. And that's before you have to figure out how it would work with, say, a CMMS. Whereas, the approach Roshan, Nick, and the team here has taken is how can we give you AI that's built with the best in class models that are possible, but without making it so that you have to develop, manage, and maintain the infrastructure that all the behind the scenes work, so that way you can just make sure you're able to focus on maintenance and that it makes it as easy as possible.
Love that. Yeah, this is so I know we did a little bit of a deviation there from our planned talk track, but I think it was important to kind of help people understand where we're coming from first principles around how we're thinking about this. Because as we start to talk about some like inventory management and parts consumption and some of their actual workflows, we want to make sure they feel like I think we're being thoughtful about the sort of foundation that this all rests on. So kind of putting a bow on the inventory and optimization questions, because I know there's some exciting things in the long term side of this. How is AI going to detect inefficiencies in inventory usage and make cost savings suggestions? And how are we thinking about that?
It's a tricky problem, honestly. The way that we think about it is assuming all of the other steps are in place. So I think we've talked about consistent data generation, about making it easier for these things to be recorded in a structured and unstructured way. We want the parts consumption trends, but in cases where we notice anomalies, we want human commentary on why that was the case. If it was, irregular, or if there was just some outlier that we're not noticing. But over time, all of this goes into AI augmented reporting, in my opinion. There's two key areas that can help with. One is getting the info that you need much more easily. These analytics tools, as I'm sure many folks on the call have seen, can be extremely complicated. So at MaintainX, we try to make this very simple, where we have configurability around all of the different things that you're looking for in reporting, and we have in the future AI assistance on, ask a question with natural language, get a chart out, get a dashboard much more quickly than sitting and configuring it. And the second piece is for those anomalies, for those deviations from trend that we're seeing, noticing that is one piece from AI, but I think that the piece that we're really trying to get to as quickly as possible is the actionability. So now that you've seen an inefficiency in any of my practices, what do I do? What is the recommendation here? How do I make sure that that actually happens rather than going through 5 different steps? Just having a suggestion that you can click and immediately use in the product, whether that's a change in preventive maintenance patterns or a change in frequency of ordering on a particular part. We want to make sure that the reporting translates into actual changes with a single step.
Love it. Excuse me. No, that's fantastic. I want to shift gears a little bit here and kind of talk about how AI-driven work order management scheduling is going to work. And I've seen a few questions in the audience from folks asking if we're going to show some demos. We will. We think it's kind of important to help. We want to really cover an area that is harder to see just from our website, right, and from our product. So we want to kind of help give you some behind the scenes, commentary around how we're thinking about these feature designs, and we will get into some of that. So thanks for asking and who were patient with us. We have some fun things to share with you on the call as well. But yeah, how does AI analyze reactive maintenance data to help improve programming strategies? How are we doing that today, and how are you thinking about that? Andrew, you want to start off on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned demos. I think this is actually one thing that we can show quickly, in that, it's going back to having good data, the importance of it, and that, I think maybe broadening the sense of, yes, using reactive maintenance data to improve preventive strategies, right? In this case, we often think about 2 features that we released last year: smart time estimates, and Roshan already mentioned one, anomaly detection, where reactive in the sense that you're inputting this data, and as a result, you're able to take a different action to stay ahead of downtime happening or to keep your workforce from, from inaccurate estimates about how long your workforce will take. At the end of the day, right, trying to keep your assets online and being able to, optimize every single wrench hour that you have, making sure that every hour is available. Would it help if I just showed those quickly, Nick?
Oh, I think folks in the audience will be real excited to hear it. Let's show them what we got.
All right. All right. So what we can see here is that I'm in MaintainX right now, and I'm looking at a work order that I have. It's for a jib crane. It's to be able to do a daily scale calibration. Now, the first thing is that this is a repeating work order. We already have it all built out so that you can see all the information. But maybe I'm starting to wonder, this 30 minutes, maybe this isn't actually how long the scale calibration takes. Maybe I'm curious, right? Maybe instead it's actually the first time that I've been setting this up in a while, and I need to figure out, okay, I think I actually believe it's going to take longer, or maybe it's shorter. I'm not entirely sure. So long as I've done this procedure enough times, you can see that right here around the estimated time, let's go back to that trust in AI that I can punch in the amount of time that I've actually taken or I think that this will take. But once there's enough information for the AI to draw from, it can give me an estimated work order time. That way, it's looking back at how long have these work orders taken, using these procedures, using similar items, and be able to say, hey, actually, you thought it was going to take half an hour. You're really under scheduling how long this work order is going to take. It's going to eat up so much more of your technician's time. Instead, you can use smart time estimates, right? And it will just start to go ahead and add that in automatically. Going back to that trust element, you can always then go ahead and enter a manual estimate instead. Maybe you think this is way too long, right? Maybe you've heard from technicians, yeah, my work orders have been open really long, or maybe it seems like it's taking a while, but I had to do some other things in the middle of it or whatnot. You can start to take some of that into account. You still have total control over what you're using, but it's a way to, just have some slight, light AI in there within your daily workflow. And then the other item that I was talking about here about, using some of your existing maintenance data is in this scenario here where I'm actually going through the procedure, right? And this is anomaly detection that I'm going to talk about in a second, right? Where I'm supposed to go and calibrate the scale. And typically this has been 200 pounds, that I'm using a 200-pound weight. It should be within 2 pounds higher or lower. And so if I enter 200 pounds, if I enter, sorry, 195 pounds, what you can see is like typically this is going to show this number is lower and that it has increased over time. It'll give me a notification if it's noticing an odd pattern. That's even why it showed with 200 that, hey, it's typically been increasing a bit. But if I go over, say 205 pounds, you can see that historically the value hasn't been higher than 200. So even though it's that plus minus of 2 pounds, typically it's not over. And so I have the option to do something as a result. I can mark it as anomaly. I can do something as a follow-up action upon that. And again, it's just analyzing the large scale data trend that's available to the AI within MaintainX without me having to go and know, maybe as a new worker, spotting the pattern myself, which I might not be able to do. So those are just two, I would say light AI features that you can get started with in MaintainX today.
And two quick points I want to share on that, and this is fantastic. I think like we're obviously showing this for like a manual entry point, but this sort of same sort of anomaly detection would work uh, for an automated meter or something that's a little more regulated, right?
Go ahead, Roshan. I think you were about to jump into that one.
Yeah, just jumping in on a smaller point, I saw a handful of questions in the chat about data points and the
Yeah,
amount that are necessary.
that's where I was going to go next. So perfect.
Awesome. The answer is the more we have, the better that the forecast or the, anomaly detected is likely to be. But we start with as few as 3 data points. It doesn't have to be 100 for us to get started. As Andrew highlighted, and as we'll continue to emphasize, we still want that human validation. We want to confirm that, we got it right and that you can use it, but it doesn't take that long to get started.
Love it. Um, that was fantastic. We're gonna go forward to a few more of these subjects to make sure we can cover some other exciting things we have on the roadmap for today. And don't worry, that's not your last product glimpse and demo. We'll just sort of coming out of it. So keep everyone on their toes here for a minute. But talk about like AI and reporting and data analysts, because I think this is one of the most exciting things with being able to track KPIs, having that kind of futuristic promise of everyone having a data scientist in their pocket to help them do their job better. Yeah, how can organizations balance AI-driven insights with human expertise to make better make better maintenance decisions, uh, both today and kind of how we're thinking about that evolution?
Yeah, I can kick off on this one. It's always a balancing act, that's for sure. Balancing AI-driven insights with human expertise. We again want to build trust in the solution step by step. We want to ask questions along the way, even from every single work order, like you've just seen, into recommendations on how often something should occur or the person that it should be assigned to. We start small, but over time, the AI insights get bigger and bigger picture. So as we get that validation, as we move to reporting, and as these recommendations get more, broad, they also get more complicated. If we're making recommendations on an entire PM strategy or on, purchasing decisions for a quarter, it's a trickier use case, but it depends on the incoming data. It depends on how often people have used the earlier stages of the solution, and eventually what the recommendation actually is. But that's definitely our focus is over time lean into the strengths of AI and see exactly what we can do here, especially for things that are much more challenging in app that take a lot more clicks. I think a very simple way to put it is today we're automating 1 or 2 clicks. Down the road, we want to automate 20 or 30 clicks and more complicated actions in the product.
I think of it from a totally different perspective, right? I hear your
Yeah.
question. I think of something in a totally different way about reporting and whatnot, and that not everybody can be an expert in how to read dashboards, how to read reports and the graphs that come with it, right? And that what can happen is sometimes you can look at it and maybe it's not quite giving you the answer that you're actually looking for, because that's the point of reports and dashboards, right? Give me a trend out of my data, help me understand my data and figure out an insight out of it and answer the question you're looking for. I think one of the things we're thinking about down the road that we're excited by is giving people a different way to be able to interact with their data. So instead of necessarily needing to go and find, reports and dashboards yourself, that maybe you can ask questions and be able to get an answer about the trends and insights themselves so that you don't have to be an analytics expert, right? So, AI is being used in that way, not necessarily to generate the KPIs and the reports and whatnot that you might be interacting with, but to just be able to get you that information instead of kind of having to interact it with the more traditional sense.
Love that. And so like, does AI so kind of moving on to sort of this next question is it going to help provide like real-time insights into your maintenance effectiveness and um, how are we thinking about that kind of experience for folks?
I think that piece is huge. Might be a good time for a demo as well. This
Yeah,
knowledge management task, the first place that it shows up is day to day rather than, on quarterly or yearly trends. Let me pull this up in 2 different places actually. So one is this day-to-day assistance that we see being really helpful. So this is the MaintainX application. I'm in a work order that seems to be reactive. I've already asked this question for Copilot, but basically it's just a request that comes in that doesn't have enough context. And the question that I ask is, how do I complete this work order? So it goes through, it gives you a series of steps. It tells you, all of the information that you need to know to complete this given work order. And it does that by reading through the context that's already there. It sees the title, it sees the description, it sees the procedure if it's already included. In many cases, these things go smoothly, but in many cases they don't. So we want to leverage information from OEM manuals, from SOPs that already exist, and from anything we can pull in the system itself to just make sure that technicians on the fly have access to this data and these insights. And over time, of course, that gets more complicated. We understand more of the nuance around these particular tasks, and it gets much smarter. And this is a sneak preview, but I did want to walk through this as well because one of the biggest challenges that we face is the source of data in the first place. If work orders are used as sort of a checklist, and you go through them and you just say that the thing is done. We don't get actionable insights. We don't get information we can use in the future. So a feature that's actually coming out next week within the Copilot experience is something that we're calling asset memory. That name might change, but basically what happens here is that at the end of a work order, you get the screen that says, tell your team how it went. This could be as simple as it went fine, or it can be a multi-paragraph description of all of the challenges that you faced preventing downtime on a given machine. You hit record here, you record your voice. It's super straightforward. It gives you the transcript, but when you submit it, this piece is key. What you can do is on the work order itself, you see a structured summary of whatever happened on that work order. You can go into it. It's consistently actually managed from the application itself. And what this does is if people adopt this over time, we get insights on these work orders over the course of years. And in the future, we can say this thing actually happened. I'm not sure if anyone remembers, but here's exactly what went wrong. Here was the resolution. And that piece I think is key as well. Just as we build this foundation of data, as people adopt it, the system has more and more knowledge to work with. And after that, we start to understand how to preempt the question, if you will, knowing that a piece of information exists that you might have forgotten about, and saying, "Here you go. We've already found that. We've found the answer for you from all of the work you've done in the past."
If I can jump in here, Nick and Roshan,
Yeah, please do.
we had a question coming in through the live Q&A that I think it's really topical that we could talk about for a minute here. Roshan, you just explained, right, that they be able to, that the technician who's doing the work, they can go back and give their feedback, they can record more information. And the question is basically around how can your high skilled technicians, how can you, effectively help to transfer that institutional knowledge they might have to that new generation of workforce? And so I think this is one of those ways where yeah, it might be something that happened once in the last 3 years, or maybe it's a couple times in the last 5 years, say. But if a skilled technician was able to go and troubleshoot and solve that issue, that's something that then Copilot can then help anybody, regardless of if they're new or not, to be able to get that answer. And so, right, it's kind of beyond just having information and work orders and having proper documentation and whatnot, there's also starting to be more and more ways that are intuitive to just collect that information for future use.
100% agree there. That's exactly the hope of this feature is in those cases where things don't get recorded, the work gets conducted and everything is fine, but there's no information that actually transfers forward. And it's especially tricky with more experienced technicians who don't really need the assistance in the way that younger, less experienced workers do. So one of these features and others are trying to get them to do this in a very easy, intuitive way that doesn't disrupt their day. It's already something that they likely do from what we've heard through a walkie-talkie or through an end-of-day report, but they can just speak into Copilot instead on a work order and have this information forever, right? And it'll show up, the next time someone asks about it.
And it's helpful not just
Uh,
for new technicians. It's what
yeah, go
we
ahead.
all, but being able to use it for new assets that are unfamiliar is super helpful too. But yeah, sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Yes. No, nope. That's great addition there. One thing that it's one of my favorite questions. One of my favorite questions I get when I'm showing Copilot today. We had at least a couple of folks already share this in the chat or in the Q&As. How do we how can folks trust this Copilot in mission critical environments? How do we know it's going to not hallucinate? It's a big issue that folks are seeing with AI today. Motion, it's you want to kind of talk to that, and Andrew, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. And if we have the time to show a quick demo, I know we're running short on time. We could probably host the 5-hour session on this to get into the weeds and cover everything. But
Yeah, happy to get
go
us
for it.
started. It goes back to the AI protections and the data protections that we were discussing earlier. The same case, actually, like to the greatest extent, applies to Copilot. We want to make sure that the information going into the system is clean and usable, and we want to make sure that it uses nothing besides that reliable data. So there are a lot of different mechanisms in the product to make sure that if it does give an answer, that it is 100% correct. If it doesn't have the information, it will just say that. We see that in questions all the time, and we actually highlight that in live demos. In a case where it just says, I don't have the answer to this actually, consider uploading another manual, consider documenting a work order, and I'll remember it for next time. But a huge piece of this, I think, is especially in these mission critical environments, making sure that people build trust in the solution by by getting these answers that are one, comprehensive, and two, are not, made up or are making assumptions that they can't actually use day to day.
I mean, plus one on everything Roshan has said. I know him and the team that has developed Copilot has worked really hard to make sure that one of the core principles, right? Getting a bad, incorrect, made up answer is worse than getting no answer, right? So that, really emphasizing if it doesn't have enough information, it's just going to tell you that. That was a key decision that was made because we don't want to give you the wrong answer. We don't want it to just give you something that is made up. So I know that was a big, big priority for the team.
Yeah. And I think that's how you'd want your most senior lead, like your mentors on your operational floor to answer. If they don't know an answer, you don't want them to make something up. You want them to hopefully have that humility and awareness to say, I don't know. Let's go ask our OEM or let's go ask our, one of our reliability engineers or someone else. And that's sort of how we want that co-pilot to be able to behave is with that sort of maturity of that senior, mentor that they might have on the floor that can cover, the vast majority of their questions, but also won't lie to them and won't try to, make things up. And I think that's something that is really important for folks to understand that to my knowledge today, there isn't any other solution out there that's offering that level of hallucination sort of protection. Um, I'm not going to pretend that that's never going to be the case where no one else will figure that out. But for the time being, I think that it's pretty powerful differentiator that Roshan and team have built out. And I want to kind of brag on them a lot. So it's pretty cool. Um,
Nick,
Go
I
for
know
it, Adrian.
we're close to time, but I think one other common question that I've seen in the chat and that we do get asked is like, how can I trust that it's not going to share my data with another customer? I think Roshan, you touched on this.
Great. I was about to bring that up. Well,
Yeah.
yes. Thank
I
you.
mean, I think to boil down a lot of what you had said, Roshan, what you and I have talked about a ton is your IP is your IP, right? It's even the question around like how can it work, can it share, can I have a shared database between my different organizations? It's kind of like, well, no, like I'm sure something could be figured out by the end of the day. The idea is that it's your IP within your organization, that is intentionally set up that way. And Copilot is not going to go and look through your information and then go and share it with a completely different customer. It's looking at your information, your data to give you answers to the questions that you have, and that isn't being shared with anybody else.
That is absolutely the case. Can confirm that the company overall is SOC 2 compliant, among other things. The AI solutions do exactly that. They protect customer data. Nothing is shared between organizations or facilities. Although it does get smarter for a particular customer or for a particular brand, if they have multiple facilities, none of this is shared between MaintainX organizations. It's all specific to one. And the more information that you put in it, the better it gets. But across the board, we're not building this generalized system. We're trying to make it as powerful as possible, but just like Andrew said, all of your data for a particular company remains your data. All of your insights, all of your recordings, stay specific to that organization.
I think one of the things we wanted to cover on this session here was just AI, talking about predictive and preventive maintenance. We may need to have a part two to this to really get into the weeds because I don't want to shortchange that subject. It's very much top of mind for a lot of folks. We have a lot of really, I think, insightful and interesting things to share on it. So I don't want to try to cram it all into the last 10 minutes here. But I wonder if you all want to, kind of want to speak kind of at a high level around where are we at today, and then where do we think like what does the timeline look like for you know real interesting progress on that front?
I think I can jump in here first, and not necessarily from the MaintainX development perspective, but from a customer perspective. We've heard that, there's still a substantial number of customers, and this is across maintenance that are just on a reactive maintenance strategy. And so kind of jumping all the way from that to say full on AI predictive, it's a lot, right? And so even making the shift from reactive to preventive is a big one. And that, really getting to be experts on your preventive maintenance strategy first is critical before then we have predictive strategies ready for you that you could use. Just because, again, going back to trust, right? It's needing to have the groundwork, needing to have the fundamentals before you can jump in and use AI to its fullest potential. But Roshan, I'll let you speak to the MaintainX predictive side.
Yeah, that was a great way to put it. And that's exactly the way we see it with our customers and with our AI strategy, both throughout this year and next year and beyond. We see it as a bit of a maturity ladder, and we want to help customers along each of those different phases, whether they're at reactive or preventive, getting up the ladder into predictive and what we really want, which we're calling prescriptive, and we've seen that term more commonly used recently. The predictive component is one side, that's for sure. We want to ingest sensor and other, data to actually predict failures, to understand what's going to happen. But more so than that, we want to actively mitigate the things. So all of this information goes into the same place. We have these two, sort of product areas. We call them asset intelligence and work intelligence. For most of today, we've been talking about work intelligence, but on the asset intelligence side, we want to ingest this information when customers are ready, when they have, the enablement on sensors, PLCs, SCADAs, and operational data. And we want to not only just trigger an alert and say something might be wrong, but say what exactly we think is wrong. Link that to Copilot, have an interactive experience to resolve the issue, and to make sure that that thing doesn't happen in the future. So we do see this as, an entire cycle. All of it's kind of linked, but it's definitely step by step. Just like Andrew said, there's no magic way to skip all the steps and go straight to prescriptive. We need the information in the first place. We need the data coming into our system, but we're excited about that future, and that's exactly where we're going.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, you both sort of painted it really well. I read an article like last fall that was around like the AI trap of people who they want to go straight to this AI world. But if you don't have that, if you're just doing reactive and you don't have a large enough data set for us to really understand, um, have that sort of be able to build that model off of, it makes it really hard for you to kind of level that up. There's a reason that you can't just go to ChatGPT today and ask it how to run your business better. And it's not going to be able to give you real actionable insights. That data is not online. And you may not even have access, may not even have that data digitized or standardized or formatted effectively or have it at all inside of your organization today. So it is a bit of a cart before the horse situation for a lot of folks. Um, but that's not to say that it's not worth it's um, driving towards that future together. I think it's not as long of a path as you think. It's maybe a little bit of a not as instant gratification as maybe we're conditioned to with some of the other things in our lives, um, but it's definitely that's the direction I think strategically that you and your organizations, those you watching, and your leadership teams need to be really hyper aware of is understanding that roadmap and what it looks like in it. And yeah, that's sort of what we're really excited about. We got about a few minutes left here. I think it might be fun to sort of talk briefly on you know, how are I want to talk about this bridge that I talk about, like what's between condition-based modeling, different approach, and true predictive, and this is more like this prescriptive. Can you kind of speak briefly to like how AI is helping identify like root causes and helping kind of make recommendations based on some of the data that's coming in?
Yeah, happy to. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It is a complicated space, but from a top-down level, we see this as a series of different steps. We want to ingest the data in the first place. Much like we've talked about in different product areas, we want to start recommending those thresholds for condition-based maintenance. People can come in and put static thresholds in, but if we see a change in patterns or a change in trend, we'll make new recommendations and say, the model has identified new thresholds for you. You get a lot of false alerts right now, or you don't get any alerts at all. So just getting to the point where we're even flagging things that need to be looked at is a starting point. From there, we go into more complicated prediction cases or even just classification cases. Now that we see something being flagged or alerted, what do you think is the issue here? What is the category of issue at minimum? And having structured procedures and work orders that let technicians go through and identify those issues and track them over time. And much like these other cases, like the work order history, this is one of those situations where we need that before getting to the true recommendation of take this part, go do this exact very specific thing, and you'll get rid of this anomaly that you're seeing from your data. That's where we're going. But in the meantime, we need to go through each of those steps, through the condition-based thresholds to the fault classification that gets validated by users to the more intelligent, here's exactly what's going on. Go ahead and do this, and I think your problem will be solved.
And to echo on that, right? Back
Yeah,
to the whole idea of trust and using the strategy that's right for you, getting from like preventative to predictive, right? Hey, this fault is going to occur, to then prescriptive, which Roshan is talking about, of, hey, this thing is going to happen. Here's how you should go about adjusting or doing maintenance to be able to avoid that from happening and whatnot, right? That whole idea, that's a whole another level of trust that you need to have in AI. And again, it's not something everybody's ready for. Also, it's something that you have to be able to, explain to your bosses or explain to your colleagues, like, hey, we're doing this because the AI said that we need to, right? That's, you have to build trust for yourself. You have to also build trust for your organization. And they're big steps at the end of the day. They're not insurmountable by any means, but it's easy to take it one step at a time, bit by bit. I mean, if everybody at your organization is ready to jump heads on in, that's amazing. That is great news to hear.
Okay. I'm going to throw both of y'all a quick curveball here, and with fully aware that I want to be mindful of the time here. Some folks top of the hour, so you could probably write very long essays on this, and we could go on for hours with this answer. But kind of give you a short snapshot of what's sort of the end game here, or how should people even sort of think about the end game as it relates to these strategies? Where do you think this can be for MaintainX in 10 years or so?
I mean, I see if we look at, I've come from the manufacturing space in the past, and it's, they have full lights out manufacturing facilities where it's fully robotic, everything is automated, and it's lights out because, right, as many of us I'm sure are familiar, you don't have to have people in there looking at anything. It's all being done automatically. I don't know that we can ever get to that point with maintenance, because at the end of the day, right, you still need somebody to actually go and do that maintenance. But I think a world where we can make sure that maintenance teams are as effective as possible, that everybody can know how to do the job, that, ideally AI is not here to replace you. It's to empower you, enable you, and make your job easier, that it can take on some of the, more difficult, harder parts of your job. That would be great, so that you can go into work and not deal with the crappy elements, that you're going and you're dealing with the elements that are critical to your company and critical to your operations, and that you love to handle.
That's a really great answer, Andrew. I think we're on the same page there as well. I think that there's an exciting future for a lot of these different use cases, increasing in complexity, getting a better foundation, doing more tasks within the platform. The way I see it, our multi-year vision is just around really unified knowledge management. There's so many different forms of this information. There's so much data coming in that we go from, a given technician or a manager to a facility to a region or an entire global organization. And we say, here's exactly how to build consistency across all of your facilities and your thousands of employees, just getting much more bigger picture with it, and understanding, all of the different variants, all of the workflows, and making sure that they're consistent. So an organization, sorry, can have one single approach and one single data set.
Yeah, and just so y'all hear, my perspective, keep it simple. The future that end game is zero unplanned downtime. We're gonna get you there. So thank you all so much for your time today. This it has been recorded. It will be shipped. You'll get a recording sent to your email by Friday. If you want to keep the conversation going, I love the dialogue here. Come into the MaintainX community. Let's have some conversations there. We're happy to keep the conversation going, and stay on the lookout for part 2. I think this is a hot topic, and we're excited to keep sharing and learning together. So, Roshan, Andrew, you all are phenomenal today. Love the juxtaposition of the way that you both look at things. I think that was super helpful, and thank you all for being here in the audience and participating. So, thank you so much, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you so much, everyone.